Today, we're diving into the perspective of the very controversial media figure, Katie Hopkins. We're going to use her own words from a recent interview to unpack her side of the story on being deplatformed, fighting UK speech laws, and what she claims this all says about modern Britain. So, what does this fight really look like through her eyes? Let's get into it.
Right off the bat, she hits us with this incredibly jarring statement. I mean, talk about a dramatic opening. It immediately frames her journey as not just, a professional problem, but a genuine existential crisis. It really highlights the intense personal stakes in this whole debate.
So, where does she think all this pressure is coming from? Well, her first big argument is a critique of the entire media landscape, which she sees as being in complete chaos. For her, there's been a massive shift in who actually holds the power. Now, this is where it gets interesting. Here's how she breaks it down. On one side, you have legacy media, like the BBC, which she calls a kind of monopoly that's on its way to death. But on the other side, you've got this new world of independent creators, which she says is super exciting. But, and this is a big but, she argues this new world has a hidden master. And this is her key point. She argues the real power isn't with the creators or their audiences anymore. It doesn't matter if you have 1 million followers. The algorithm, the tech, is the new gatekeeper. It's the one that decides what you see and what gets buried, effectively turning creators into people just feeding a tech monster.
And this idea of an algorithm controlling everything leads directly to her next point. It's not just tech policing content, it's the state policing words. And she uses her own, very recent experience to make the case that speech itself is basically being criminalized in the UK.
Hopkins throws out this pretty shocking number. She claims that 12,000 people get arrested in the UK every single year just for opinions they post on social media. She uses this to argue that the UK is becoming one of the most restrictive places in the world to say what you think online. Which brings us to her own run-in with the law. She was investigated by the police after a live stream. And the reason, she called herself a spaz, a term she says she's used for years in relation to her epilepsy. So the accusation wasn't about actual harm, but about causing perceived offense with a joke she made about herself. This really illustrates her core belief that the process is the punishment. Just look at the timeline. She gets a police letter in May, she's interviewed under caution for 90 minutes in August, and then she has to wait all the way until November just to be told that no charges would be filed. Her point is that the whole long, stressful process is the penalty, whether you're guilty or not. And to show this isn't just about her, she points to other cases that she sees as part of a disturbing trend. She mentions the footballer Joey Barton getting a suspended prison sentence for things he said online, Lucy Connolly getting 4 years for a tweet, and even her own libel case, where she lost over £1.4 million based on perceived harm to someone's reputation. So if you're a creator online today, all of this puts you in a really tough spot. It leads to what she calls the creator's paradox, this constant battle between being authentic and just playing the game. And this is the central question she poses. Think about it. If you need views to survive, but the algorithm seems to reward anger and outrage more than anything else, are you actually in control of your own voice? Or are you just performing for a machine? Hopkins, of course, puts it a lot more bluntly. In her view, when you start chasing those metrics and tailoring your content to please the algorithm, you stop being an artist. You just become, well, what she says on the screen. So what's the solution? How do you fight back? For her, the answer is to outsmart the machine. She argues that things like humor, satire, and nuance, well, algorithms just don't get them yet. She compares AI to a German with no sense of humor. And that, she says, is why she started doing stand-up comedy. Okay, so she's laid out all these problems. A media controlled by tech, speech laws getting stricter, which she calls a broken Britain. So what's the fix? What does she think is the path forward? Well, her solutions are a mix of big-picture politics and some very personal advice. Politically, she says people should vote for the Reform Party. But then she gets down to the individual level. She says people need to stand up and intervene when they see something wrong. Find a purpose, connect with people in real life, not just online, and maybe most importantly for her, use laughter and even mockery to stay resilient. And this quote right here really sums up her entire outlook. She sees all the current struggles not as the end, but as a necessary winter that has to happen before you can get to the spring. It's a pretty stark vision, for sure, but in her view, it's ultimately an optimistic one. And that really leaves us with this final massive question. In a world that's being shaped more and more by algorithms and fueled by outrage, figuring out where that line is between protecting free expression and preventing real harm, that might just be one of the biggest challenges we're facing today.